The human body is pretty amazing. I don't know if you remember, for you adults, I don't know if you remember when you started learning about the human body. I remember in biology class, we were learning about a lot of different things and how systems work in the body and things like that. I got to dissect a frog, and I'll be honest with you, that was about the worst thing I could have done. Like, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was gross to me. And so, there was nothing in me that when I took biology, I was like, you know what? I might want to become a doctor someday because I really want to just see the inside of people. It just wasn't something that I wanted to do. But the human body is amazing. And I remember as we were studying those kinds of things, you hear about, okay, we have 206 bones. And you're like, okay, if I was honest, people would be like, oh, 206 bones in our body. I thought there was actually more. So I was kind of surprised that was it. But then they started getting to these numbers that kind of blew my mind. They started saying things like, we have 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. And I started going, 60,000 miles? That's not possible. And I know that I'm tall, so I might have a little bit more than some of you guys as far as length goes. But 60,000 miles of blood vessels, I'm thinking we could wrap all my blood vessels around the earth a few times. That's wild to me. 100,000 miles of nerve fiber in our bodies wrapped up in this body. It just kind of blows my mind. 100 trillion cells in our body, all of these things working together to make your body and my body do what they're doing today. For you to be sitting there, those things are working together. For you to have walked into this place or to have come into this place, or whether you rode a car or drove a car, however you got here today, the way you came into this place, all of those things are working together. And it's just mind-blowing how amazing the human body is. And today, as we look at the last half of Psalm chapter 139, we started in the first half last week. I think David is going, God, it's amazing what you've done. How you've created the human body. He says, wow, God, you are so powerful. That's what we're going to look at today. Psalm chapter 139, starting in verse 13. He says, for you formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Now, I want to pause for just a second and say, when he says the depths of the earth, people understood that in those times to be the womb. That's what he's saying. I was intricately woven in the womb, put together in that way. Now, you remember last week, verses 1 through 6 talked about, David was talking about the omniscience of God, that God knows everything, but he didn't just say, God, you know everything. He says, God, you know me. God, you know everything, but God, I'm blown away that even though you know everything, you know me. And then he talks about God's omnipresence, that he says, God, it's amazing that you are everywhere, but God, it's amazing that you're everywhere with me. And now this is the picture that God, you created everything, but it is so amazing. It's not just that you created everything. He says, God, you created me. This is such a special thing. He says that God, you created me. And the idea is that God created you, but that he designed you. God designed you and he designed me. You are not an accident. There are some people in the world that will tell you that you are just some cosmic accident. I want you to know today that you are not an accident. There's nothing else in the world. I say this regularly. There's nothing else in the world that you look at, even something simple, something like this table right here that's pretty simple. It's a piece of wood. It is stained a little bit. It's sanded. It's a piece of wood on some metal that was put together. But nobody walks up and goes, man, that thing was a crazy accident, right? That thing put itself together. That thing came together on its own. Two things, metal and wood, lumber, that came together. You say that's an amazing thing. Probably took millions and millions of years, billions of years for that thing to put it. No, nobody says that. Because you look at this, as simple and basic as it is, you look at it and you say, man, that was designed. Somebody put that together for a reason. And people want to look at your body and my body with all those things we just discussed and say, well, that's one big cosmic accident. I want you to know today, to be reminded today that you're not an accident, that God designed you. He had intention in how he designed you. Now, here's the reality. Every one of us in the room would say, you know what, I wish God would have changed that design just a little bit, right? Everybody in the room, if you could change something, you would. You might not like how he designed you. You might not like the way he put you together. That's a reality for everybody. Now, you might say, well, there's some people who love the way they look, maybe for today, but that's not going to last. All of us, every one of us, are on common ground that we wish there were some things that God would have changed in the design, but I want you to know that God designed you exactly how he wanted you. He created you exactly how he wanted you. That's what we have to understand, and here's why this is so important that we understand that, because when we understand that God designed us, this next part makes sense, that he created us in his own image. You were created in the image of God. Genesis chapter 1 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Did you know, and I'm going back to the biology and all the different science classes, did you know there is no other kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species on the planet that was created in the image of God except for you? Nothing else in all of creation was created in the image of God. And here's what's interesting. You go back and look at the Genesis account. When it talks about God creating everything, how did he create everything? God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God said, and God said, and God said, and there was. God said, and there was. God said, and there was. When it came to man, God did not speak you into existence. It said he formed you. He formed you. He created you. You are his handiwork, literally with his own hands. And this is what David's saying here. He says, you wove me, you knit me together. You are intentional. He says, I am fearfully made. And this is a beautiful picture. This idea of being fearfully made is that I am awe-inspired. I can't believe the way that you created me. I can't believe what you've done. I am blown away. It actually humbles me in a way to think, God, you are so powerful and so amazing that it humbles me. He says it causes me to tremble. That's the idea, is that it causes me to tremble to think about how powerful you are. So we talked about God's omniscience, that he knows everything. We talked about his omnipresence, that he is everywhere. This is the picture of his omnipotence, that he is all powerful. He has all power. And that's why David says, I am fearfully made. This is one of the things that he looks out. You remember we talked a couple months ago at Psalm chapter 8, that David looked out and he was blown away by God. He says, when I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, he says, when I look at the heavens, when I look at all of you that you've created, I go out at night, and you imagine David again, leaning on his sheep, looking out at the stars because he was a shepherd. He got to view that a lot. He says, when I look at the vastness of your creation, he says, when I consider these things, he says, what is man that you're mindful of him? The Son of Man that you care for him. He says, when I look at all of that, I am absolutely blown away at how big you are. And guess what? He says, it's crazy to me. He says, I realize how powerful you are. I am blown away by you. But now he looks in. Right? We see this picture that, God, you are so big and so transcendent, and I look at the vastness of your creation, and I'm blown away by you. Now he says, I look at what you've done just in my own body. Now I'm going to look inside. I look out, and I'm blown away. He says, now I look in. And you know what I find? I'm just as blown away. I'm just as blown away. 100 trillion cells. David didn't know all that, but he knew about the human body. He says, I look at how you've built me, how you've created me, and I'm blown away that you can do something like that. You have all power, and you created me, and you designed me. He's blown away again by God. Talked about the human body, but Francis Collins, who's the head of the Human Genome Project, talks about DNA, and he says there's 3 billion letters long and written in 4-letter codes, that each cell, each of your 100 trillion cells, have 46 segments of DNA. Now, you know in class how this works, that there's 23 that come from your mom and 23 that come from your father, from a man and from a woman. They come together, and it's densely coded information in every single cell. Now, in this Human Genome Project, he says that if you took one cell and translated that into book form, the DNA, you wrote it out into book form, he says it would fill 4,000 books. One cell written out, 4,000 books, the DNA. But you take the 100 trillion cells in your body, You understand how much information is written in your DNA, in each of those cells, 100 trillion cells in your body. If you translated that into book form in small letters like a normal book would be, did you know that all of those books would fill the Grand Canyon 78 times? Now, when I heard that idea, I was like, man, it would fill the Grand Canyon. I was blown away, and they're like, no, 78 times. I was like, I don't have space for that. My mind can't comprehend that. David looks in and he says, God, I can't believe what you've done. I'm overwhelmed by your power. He says, I am fearfully made. You are fearfully made. God designed you. You're created in his image. You are fearfully made. And then the next thing he says, you are wonderfully made. He says, I am wonderfully made. How do you know that you're wonderfully made? Because some of you, like I said, you might look and you might say, man, I wish I was a little bit different. How do you know that you're wonderfully made? First reason is because God made you on purpose. He made you on purpose. You know, not only are you not a cosmic accident, you're actually not even an accident of the Lord. Like God who created you didn't create you and go, oh man, that wasn't quite right. I was trying to do this a little different. Like that's not how it works. He says, you formed me. You knit me together. You think about creation. God said, and it was, and he said it was good, right? Now, we've talked about this regularly, but again, when God says something is good, his standard of good is, that's what I intended. That's perfectly like I intended. God doesn't have like, oh, well, that's good enough. No, when he says it's good, he's saying that's what I intended. It's perfect. It's the way I made it to be. And you were formed in that way. You were knit together. He says, you knit me together in my mother's womb. That is the idea that it was intention, that it took time and focus and energy and effort. Now, it didn't tire him out, but he actually was using his power and using his energy, using all of his creativity to form you and to make you into who he wanted you to be. You are wonderfully made. How do you know you're wonderful? Because God did it on purpose. Second reason is because God's works are wonderful, because his works are wonderful. He says, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And then he says right after that, he says, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And then he says, and wonderful are your works. My soul knows that full well. He says, I'm wonderfully made. And by the way, wonderful are the works that you make. That's what David says. I want to just point out in the original Hebrew language that there's actually no conjunction in this little statement. And so when we translate it that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, the actual translation probably more accurately would be that I am fearfully wonderful. That's the idea, that I am blown away at how wonderful your work is, that you have created me the way you did. A lot of us, like I said, we have a hard time sticking with that, understanding that, because we wish God would just change some things about us. Now, I just want to remind you that, like, if you have a cell phone in your pocket, it was designed to do something, and sometimes it doesn't quite work, and you're kind of frustrated because you're like, it's not working right. I've got to close out the apps. I got to restart my phone and stuff like that. Listen, it was designed to do something. Just because it's not working right doesn't mean it is a design problem. Sometimes for us, we can get kind of bugs in the system, right? And for all of us, we have a bug in the system. There's some things about us because sin entered into the world. There's some things about us that are some bugs in the system. That's not God's problem. That's not his issue that he created in us, but it is a problem that he's working and has dealt with in us through his son Jesus. Because it is our problem, God said, you know what, I want to take care of that for them. But you were fearfully and wonderfully made. You are fearfully wonderful. So the first thing is that God designed you. The next thing is that God knows your days. It says, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. This is the idea, again, that God knows everything. He doesn't just know everything. He knows everything before it ever happens. He's never surprised by anything. He's not learning as he goes, just like we talked about last week. It says that, God, you already knew all my days before they happened. All those days were already written down. They were ordained for me and written down in your book before they came to be. And then the next thing says that God thinks about you. He says, how precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I were to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. I awake and I am still with you. He says, how precious to me are your thoughts about me. I want you to know again that God doesn't just know everything, he knows you. God isn't just everywhere, he's everywhere with you. God isn't just powerful and he didn't just create everything, he created you. And guess what? Because he knows everything, because he created everything, because he has all that power, David says, it amazes me that you think about me. With all the other things, God, that you would have to think about, he says, how precious are your thoughts about me? God, I think about the fact that you think about me, and it blows me away. He says, your thoughts about me outnumber the grains of sand. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the beach, but next time you go to the beach, just take a moment and say, God, help me to think about how often you think about me. Pick up some sand in your hand and start counting the grains one at a time. Okay? And then once you get done with that handful, go, okay, how many handfuls will be on this beach? Of course, you would never do that. But I just want you to think, when you go to the beach, think, God, your thoughts about me outnumber the grains of sand, not just on this beach, of every beach. God, that's precious to me that you would think about me in that way. God, that matters to me that you would think about me in that way. And then there's a big change that happens. After he says all these things, God, you formed me, you knit me, you created me, I'm fearfully, wonderfully made. God, you think about me, that's amazing. There's this change, and a lot of people, a lot of commentators have an issue with this change. Some people say that this was added later, but there's a lot of people that are really clear that this was not added later, because we'll see how it circles back around at the end to where we started in the chapter. But listen to this change. He says, God, you think about me, how precious are your thoughts about me. Now he says, oh, that you would slay the wicked. Now, I don't know if that feels like a change to you. That's a pretty drastic change in this psalm. He says, oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak evil of you. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them as my enemies. Now, again, I don't know about you, but you listen to this and you're like, I feel like we just started an entirely different chapter in the book of Psalms. Now, remember, these are all songs of praise in different ways. Now, I don't know how, you might be like, I don't know how that fits into a song of praise, but here's the idea. I just want you to get the general idea of what's happening. He has just spent all this time saying, God, you are so good. God, you are so good. God, you know everything, and God, you know me. God, you are everywhere, and you are everywhere with me. God, you created everything, but you didn't just create everything. You created me. God, you think of me? And then he says, there are people who speak against you. It's the idea that, God, I don't understand that. God, I'm talking about how amazing and how great and awesome you are, and I'm blown away by who you are, and these people just don't have an understanding of you. And he says, these people that are in opposition to you, God, I oppose them. If they oppose you, I oppose them. They are my enemies. Anyone who opposes you is my enemy. And some of us would look at this and we'd say, I don't understand how he can go from this beautiful psalm of praise to saying what he's saying right now. Listen to me. I want to tell you this very clearly. I have 3 kids. I love my kids. I can talk about, listen, they're not perfect, like God is perfect. They're not perfect at all, but I love my kids. And I can talk about how amazing they are, how great they are. But the moment someone comes against my children, I promise you, I'm going to start sounding like this. Because guess what? The ones who come against the ones I love, the ones who come against the ones you love, are in opposition to you. And that's the idea. He said, God, you're so amazing, and I just don't understand it. God, I am so much on your side that anybody who's in opposition to you, I'm obviously going to be in opposition to. He said, he actually uses the word hatred. I have this hatred for them because, God, you are so amazing. Now, again, anything that's against my children, that wants to do harm to my children, I am in opposition to. I am in hatred. I don't want that for my children. And this is the idea of what David says. But then he closes this psalm with something that's beautiful. And honestly, this is something in every area of our life This should be a prayer. This should be an examination. This should be something that we do. And I started thinking about what's the context of him saying this. It's right in the middle of him saying, God, you're amazing, you're awesome, and these people who are against you, I am in opposition to them. And then he says this, he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Just like we sang a moment ago. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. I imagine he says, God, I have this hatred for these people. Because they're in opposition to you, I'm in opposition to them. But he says, but God, I want you to make sure that my heart is right. So he says a couple things. He says, God, first, would you just search me? God, would you search my heart? He says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. So he says, search me, God, and then know me. I want to remind you that in verse 1, he says, O Lord, you have searched and known me. This is why I say that I don't think there's a disconnect in this psalm. I actually think it's all part of the same psalm, and a lot of people would agree because of these connections that at the start and at the end, he says, God, you have searched and you know me. And at the end, he says, God, search me and know me. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. What he's saying is, God, you can look at everything in my life. God, look at all these things. Search me. Know everything about me. And because you have searched and because you've known me, he says, show me. He says, see if there's anything offensive in me. God, is there anything in my life that's in opposition to you, that somebody who knows you, somebody who is praising you would say that I'm in opposition to them because they're on your side? God, is there anything in me that's in opposition to you? He says, search me, know me, show me those things that might be in opposition to you. And then he says, and God, lastly, would you just lead me? God, would you lead me in the way everlasting? God, you know everything. God, you know me. God, you are everywhere. God, you're everywhere with me. God, you created everything, but God, you created me. So with all those things, would you search me? Would you know me? Would you show me? And God, would you lead me? Because I trust you completely. Now, as we look at this Psalm chapter 139, one of my favorite Psalms. There's a reason for it. When I was in college, I studied this Psalm. Spent a lot of time in it. Spent quite a bit of time for a summer in this. And I don't remember if it was my sophomore year, my junior year of college. I remember that I went back to school, went to college in Oklahoma, and there was a guy that came and spoke to a large group of college students. And he gave a message that he intentionally titled, and over and over again said this phrase. He titled it, God does not care about the little things in your life. A whole message. And he was very excited and shouting and saying all these things. And he would say things like, you know what, maybe you had a car and your car broke down and now you've got to walk to class. You got to walk a couple miles and you think it's a big deal. I want you to know God doesn't care about that. And he gave all these different scenarios about things that we would get worked up about, things that we might be stressed about. And over again, he would say, God doesn't care about that. You think God cares about that. God doesn't care about that. And honestly, it just hurt my heart because I was sitting there thinking, he's saying this to all these college students, and I'm grateful that I know better because I spent an entire summer studying a passage that says that God cares about everything in my life. And I just want to tell you today, if you've ever thought or wondered, or maybe somebody told you that God doesn't care about the little things in your life, some people in the room, you might think that there are some big things. You're like, I'm not even sure God cares about those. I want you to know God cares about everything. You matter to him. He created you. He designed you. He doesn't just know everything. He knows you. He's not just everywhere. He's everywhere with you. It's personal. He didn't just create everything. He created you. He doesn't just think about everything because he sees everything and knows everything. He thinks about you. And he cares about the little things. I go back to the passage from last week. He says, Lord, you have searched and you know me. He says, you know when I sit down and when I stand up. You know when I move. You know everything I do. You know what's going to come out of my mouth before I've even thought about it. I want you to know God cares. He cares about you. He loves you. His eyes are on you. And if there's anything in your life today that you think, well, that's too small for God, you have the wrong view. Now, are there things that we get caught up in that maybe we might not need to get caught up? Sure, that can happen. I find myself doing that. I was talking with some friends just this week about some things where I sometimes am like, you know what, that's a big deal. I'm like, it's actually not that big of a deal. But I want you to know, God still cares about those things. God still cares. His thoughts are still on you. His thoughts are still with you. He still cares about you. You could take anything to him. Do I want my kids to think, you know what, is this important enough for me to bring to Dad? Or do I want my kids to think, you know what, this is on my heart, this is on my mind, I want to take it to my Father? I want my kids to bring me anything. And again, sometimes there's times where I'm like, you know what, I don't have time, and I need to pause and go, you know what, I actually do have time. I want to know that thing. God doesn't do that with you. He doesn't go, hey, I'm trying to keep the world spinning. I need you to leave me alone. He doesn't do that because he cares about you. God cares about the little things and the big things. God cares about everything going on in your life. He cares about you. And if you don't know him today, you can come to know him. A God who created everything, that created you, has a plan and a purpose for you. You can come into a relationship with him. But for those of us who know him, I just want to remind you what I said last week. There are some people in the world who think that they can run from God. They're trying to run from God and think that they can, and they can't. And I want to remind you today that if you say, you know what, I'm not trying to run from God. I know him. I'm not trying to, but I feel like I have. I feel like I've run from God. You think you have run from God. You haven't, because he's still with you. Today might be a day where you just say, you know what, I have a relationship with God, but I need to turn back. I need to pray this. God, would you search me? Would you know my heart? Would you test me? Know my anxious thoughts, the things that are causing me to be anxious. Would you know those things? Would you look into my life and see if there's anything offensive, anything that's in opposition to who you are? Would you show me those things? And then, God, today, I'm just turning around to you again, and I'm saying, would you lead me today? God, would you just lead me? And I know you are leading me, but the idea is, God, I want to follow you. Me asking you to lead me is not because you haven't been. It's because I probably haven't been following you. So God, would you help me to follow you again today? How amazing is it that we have a God who loves us, who created us, who knows everything about us? Now, again, I remind you, that's one of the scariest things. He knows everything about you, everything about me, and he still loves us. He wants to lead us. His thoughts are on us. He's with us everywhere we go. That's reason to praise. That's reason to celebrate. That's reason to be overwhelmed. That's reason to say, God, I trust you. This psalm gives us every reason we could possibly need to understand who God is, how amazing God is, to be blown away by him. It's where we say, God, I give you everything. God, I give you my life. And for all of us, every single day, that's a decision we have to make. If you're in Christ, you still have to make that decision. God, today, I give you my life. I married my wife 20 years ago. Guess what? Every single day, I remind myself, I'm married to my wife. That's how it works, right? If you made that decision, today is a good day again to say, God, I come back before you. I just ask you to lead me again. If there's anything that's against you, I want you to show me. And maybe today in our response time, maybe that's what you need to say is, God, would you just search me? Would you know me? Would you show me? And God, would you lead me?